millions exploited, 13 countries called out, and an estimated $236 billion reaped from this horrific practice. The U.S. State Department just released new information on modern-day slavery. The report singled out China as one of the world's worst offenders, saying state-sponsored forced labor is widespread in China, with nearly 4 million people exploited there. Joining us to delve into the report and ways to end this atrocity are two guests: Nash, a former law enforcement officer and trafficking investigator, and Andi Buerger, founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now, Dan, a lot to unpack here, but first, what do you make of this latest report?
Thank you for having me. This report has been pretty consistent with previous reports. China has really been the leader in trafficking in the world for the last 10 to 15 years at least. And I honestly, unfortunately, don't see that stopping anytime soon.
And Andi, as a survivor yourself, how are you reacting to this report, especially that this is state-sponsored?
Well, thank you for having me as well, but I am not surprised. We've known this has been happening for quite some time, and as Dan said, we don't see it ending anytime soon unless there's definitive action, even by American companies that do business with China. There is no one saying enough. Genocide is human trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, all of that. China has been the leader for some time now.
And Dan, the report highlights the amount of profits these countries reap from this atrocious practice. Now, we did see the U.S. pass the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act as a direct response to the Chinese regime's systematic use of forced labor. But when it comes to holding these countries accountable, what needs to be done?
Well, really, we're not doing anything. I mean, you're talking just here in the United States, there's some 15,000 illicit massage businesses that are all Chinese organized crime. That's 30 to 60,000 victims just here in the United States that are Chinese victims being trafficked by Chinese organized crime. And we haven't done anything about that in the last 20 years. So, I mean, I would accept anything at this point as far as standing up and trying to stop, this onslaught of trafficking that's coming out of China.
And expanding on that, Andi, talk to us about the situation inside the U.S., because often trafficking is spoken about as if it's happening far away or in other countries. Now, you do have films like Sound of Freedom that highlight the fact it is also happening here in America. How do we bring awareness to the fact that it's happening, it's here now, without scaring people away from helping the voiceless?
Absolutely. That's a great point, Tiffany, because we want to get the truth out with hope and not terrify people. But at the same time, we also have to understand every 40 seconds in the U.S., a child 18 years or under is abducted. That means they are taken or lured into something that looks safe. And within 48 hours, will be in a trafficking ring or some other kind of criminal activity, but basically sex trafficking. The other part of it is people need to understand that one victim is sold anywhere from 20 to 25 times a day. Imagine a 10-year-old child, okay, or a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old, anyone being sold that many times and being drugged and forced against their will into shameful activities. But to your other point, what we can do is say, okay, maybe I don't know enough about this. Let's get educated. Organizations like DAN's or Voices Against Trafficking, we can help. We can get training. We can help educate parents how to have conversations at age-appropriate levels so that their kids, it goes beyond stranger danger. We need to really have a conversation about what human trafficking may mean in that particular family situation, and also enforce the laws that we already have on the books, Tiffany. We are not doing our job as citizens, whether it's local, state, or federal. One act of human trafficking, if you're convicted, should carry 20 years federally. But we're inconsistent when we have celebrities, we've seen the stories, and all of their sentences are different. Why is that?
And on the note of education, Dan, when it comes to emerging technologies like, say, AI, there's pros and cons. AI can help detect and flag harmful content across social media, analyze online ads and languages to help law enforcement, but it can also be used as a tool by criminal networks with, say, deepfakes, etc. Talk to us about how law enforcement is navigating this new era of AI.
I honestly think we should just keep it even more simple than that. So, the dirty secret about human trafficking in America is that only about 17% of law enforcement are trained at all in human trafficking. And if you break that down between skills based training and awareness based training, you're talking less than 10%. People think that the law enforcement has got all this training when it comes to human trafficking. And as I travel around the country and teach law enforcement every single week, what I see over and over and over is that they are not trained. And it's not just the small agencies. It's not just the small police departments, the small sheriff's departments. It's some of our largest agencies in our country. And I'll just use this agency as an example, not because I'm trying to throw anybody under the bus, but because everybody knows them. The FBI, for example, everybody knows the FBI. They do, they're our federal law enforcement agency. They have no training in human trafficking, zero, not in 1 minute. So when an FBI agent leaves their academy to go be an FBI agent somewhere, they don't have any human trafficking training. And then we wonder why we're not successful. But it's across the board with almost all of our federal agents, almost all of our law enforcement. How do we expect to stop human trafficking when the police don't know what to do?
And Andy, from that more educational perspective, how are you viewing the pros and cons of AI and what that means for countering trafficking?
Well, we take a look at what internet is right now with over 1 million predators a day looking for your niece, your nephew, your child, someone that they can use as a human product and make money off of, or even depravity. That's part of human trafficking too. As a survivor myself in the early 60s, I went through that. I understood that part. Dan is absolutely right. We don't have the training, in law enforcement that we should. When I was at the FBI Academy and I did some training, it was amazing how many of those agents were completely unaware of what to do. So that definitely needs to be fixed. But the pros and cons on AI, internet, as I said, is a dangerous area. AI is even more scary because it can actually capture your voice, Tiffany, or my voice, or Dan's, and it can definitely create what looks like a false safe zone for kids, for adults, for young women at college. And so you're not really sure who that person is because AI is just that good. So we need to treat that as a volatile technological advancement.
We have seen some concerning stories in that area. Dan, in terms of solutions here, Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying in a statement that this report ensures that those who fail to act face consequences. Now, that includes passing new laws, prosecuting traffickers, protecting victims, and preventing crimes. But in your view, what do the consequences need to look like to end this horrific practice?
Well, I think if we actually have pretty good laws in the United States. The problem that I see is that we're just not investigating things properly and thoroughly, and we're missing so many things because law enforcement just doesn't know what to do. And then sometimes when we get cases, and recently there's been a whole bunch of talk about the P. Diddy case and the fact that he wasn't prosecuted or convicted of trafficking. Well, there's a whole host of reasons that could be. Could be that the prosecutors didn't do what they were supposed to do. Could be that the police were not trained and didn't know what they were supposed to do. Could be that he just didn't do it. I mean, who knows? None of us were there. But what I see over and over and over again is people jumping to conclusions when I think we should just keep it much more simple. How about we just train the police? We give them the tools that they need. They will then go and investigate. And more so than any other country anywhere in the world, we actually have a pretty good justice system and we actually have pretty good laws, but they're not going to be efficient as much as they should be if we're not doing those proper investigations to get those perpetrators up to the point where they need to be prosecuted and convicted and then go to prison for a really long time.
And on that note, Andy, how can survivors be first protected and then empowered to share their stories and help put a stop to this practice?
Well, first of all, they have to be listened to. It's very rare when a survivor is taken at their word the first time around. And what people don't realize is for the person who has been victimized, whether as a child or older, it is a life sentence for that victim. My last predator just died 8 months ago. And that was like 40 years ago that all of that happened. So it is a life sentence. So I feel that if you're convicted, you get a life sentence. I don't care if you're in isolation, as long as you never get out of jail. You don't get the perks, you don't get early release. And for those who say, oh, that's, inhumane, well, think about the person whose innocence, whose livelihood, whose ability to function normally in society has been affected. You can't replace that. You can't give me the 17 years of my childhood back. And so we want to protect them. So for survivors, one, we need to listen no matter how young they are, and then verify. Go, as Dan said, investigate. Let's find out what the truth is, and then figure out how to help that child or that victim, male or female, doesn't matter what gender, what socioeconomic background. If you are a human being and you have been exploited, that should be something that's a priority for every community to weigh in on, and for communities to learn to receive survivors. They need job skills, they need support emotionally and mentally, and most importantly, they all have PTSD, and that needs to be addressed.
Well, Andi Buerger, Dan Nash, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.